I've been a church girl all my life. There wasn't a children's choir at our church, but my mother took us to church every week, and I sat on the choir row with her and the New Bethany Chorus. Week after week, the choir director went through this list of vocal exercises and scriptures and prayer and devotionals. I absolutely loved church, and I loved church music, and I loved to sing. So when there was a children's choir, I remember the first song that I led, "If I perish, let me perish, I'm going to see the King." And it was awesome. I loved it. And every opportunity that I got to sing, I did exactly that. And so I took those principles, those choir principles with me to junior high school, to college at Hampton. And after that, a bunch of friends and I decided that we wanted to move to California, and we did. There I met my music pastor, Ron Canoli. And he was awesome, and he taught us about worship, and he taught us about praise, and he taught about being spontaneous. And he would go on the road and be away for weeks, and when he came back, he was so full of songs and ready to do things that he would teach us songs on the fly and songs on the stage, and we would just have to catch things and run with it. And it made me flexible, and it actually made me the worshiper that I am today. So I'm really grateful for every opportunity. But what I didn't realize then was all of those opportunities were a time to be with God, and even more importantly, have Him be with me. And I loved each and every one of them. So Marv and I had the opportunity to spend a year in Israel. While we were there, we got a chance to see the celebrations of the Feast of the Lord. As soon as we got back to the States, the very next thing that happened was I got to see CeCe Winans do a concert on video. During her concert, these celebrations just kept coming back to me. Soon I developed this desire to be involved with something celebratory, or to really get involved with celebrating the Lord. But we didn't have the money or the material or a connection with the right musician yet in order to do this CD project. So I had this idea in my mind, but I didn't have those three components to help me put it together. We started getting a little closer to things coming together, and the musician would fall away. And then I took a look at my material, and they were in fragments. They were more like poems. So I still didn't have that quite together. But things felt like they were converging into the right direction. Then in October 2010, my dad died suddenly. So of course my entire family had to rally around each other, and particularly my mother, in order to develop what we call the new normal. Things started to get back together, but the music was a little on the background. And then in January 2011, Marv was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a blood plasma cancer. And so then it took us about 3 years or so to kind of get things back together, and we were going into new seasons of our life at that point. Finally, things really came to the point where it was really burning in my heart to do a CD, and the resources fell from almost nowhere. The producers came to me and said, "I think it's really time for us to do your project." The musicians, they already knew, and so that kind of fell together, and everything just came together. And the material that I had was written over maybe a week time. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I kept waking up. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I kept waking up. And I finally had these songs, and I realized, oh my gosh, I almost have half of a CD project. So I thought then, I'm ready now to begin this journey. So the project is entitled He Is, and how I got there is pretty amazing to me. Marv and I were sitting around one night, and we were just discussing worship and exactly what it meant and how we worship in our home. And the Lord just began to speak to us about, you have sought my hand. And we were looking for a house, and we were thinking about a car, and we were thinking about stuff. Honestly, it did feel like we were seeking His hand. But He was reminding me that He's not a Santa Claus, or He's not a vending machine, and He's not a drive-through window, but He is the God of the universe. And so as Marv and I were studying, more and more things began to come to me about who He really is, who is the character of God, and His character containing things that are eternal as opposed to things that are temporary. Who He is Jehovah Jireh, the one whose provision is seen, and Jehovah Shalom, the God who is our peace, and Jehovah Shammah, the ever-present hope, and Jehovah Zevaot, the captain of the host of heaven, and other things that you'll hear during the CD. And so we began to move away from seeking God's hand to seeking his face and who he is, and seeking his heart and who he is, and how it feels to spend time with him and who he is, and how it feels to be in the middle of his presence and be still and be quiet and not be afraid, but just feel his love and who he